3 or 4 different campaigns regularly. I participate in a Vampire the Masquerade. It's a good old time, but this book was catered to us. The meta that's there is just insane. And it's one of those things where, all right, you need to move. Thank you. You can get your spotlight. We're going to do a Cora picks here, but lay down. Hi, bookish nerds. So it is time for the August wrap-up. We had an insane reading month for the month of August. I did participate in Battleathon, and I was on Team Snakes. We'll get into some stats about Battleathon, and we'll get into the wrap-up. So in total, for the month of August, I read 24 books. 7 were physical books, 16 were off of the Kindle, and 1 was an audiobook. I read 7,290 pages, and it was insane. No book that I read was under a 4-star. It was all 4 stars or above. I had a total of 9 5-star reads, which is crazy to me. I typically don't get that many 5-star reads. This year has been an insane reading year for me. I've read over 100 books for the year, and we're still just touching into September. So that's insane to me. I've never read that much in a year. I'd be lucky if I'd break 50 books. But for the month of August, let's get into all of the books that I read. I have my physical books here for everybody. So I guess we'll just set these right here and we'll go through them. Done and Dusted is by Lila Sage, was one of my absolute favorite books of the month. It is a reread for me, but I got this beautiful annotated copy from one of the book besties in Sarah Curley's book club, from Sid, and reading through her annotations was half of the fun. When I read this the first time, I gave it, I think, a 4.5 stars. And I don't know if it's because of the annotations or if it was because of just when I read it. But I absolutely loved and adored going through this and feeling like I was reading it with Sid. So this ended up being a 5-star read going through it. And I honestly, I'm okay with the up to the stars. There was a part of me that was like, well, should I keep the same initial rating? But I had a much better time with it in the physical copy. Plus, look at this flop. I read it on Kindle the first time, but reading it in the paperback was just an entirely different feeling. I still have Swift and Saddled. I did get the physical copy immediately after getting this and just realizing how floppy it was. And I was like, oh, I must have this. Must have a physical copy. And then pre-ordered Lost and Lassoed that comes out in November, and Wild and Wrangled, which is the 4th book and the final book in Rebel Blue. But this follows a brother's best friend trope. And this is Emmy and this is Luke. And they're just adorable. Like the banter that is there, the acts of service, the way that they take care of one another, and the way that Emmy's ADHD is addressed and how Luke tries to help her without taking over, but just being there. It means a lot having that kind of representation. And I think Lila Sage does a really good job about actually having her books and do that. So I really enjoyed this. And let's see. One of my favorite things that just some of these notations are just fantastic. So let's pick one of Sid's, because this feels applicable to anybody. If you don't like the road you're on, you can always pave a new one. Words of wisdom. I also continued my read of Percy Jackson. So this was book 2. This was Sea of Monsters. It was also what I used for my mermaid prompt. It was not the initial book that I wanted to use for my mermaid prompt for our summer bingo in Sarah Curley's book club as well for the Soulmates tier. But Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters is exactly that. You're following Percy and Annabeth and Grover not Grover, as they go through the Sea of Monsters to rescue Grover, who is currently being held captive by a Cyclops. You meet sirens, you meet a couple other different gods and goddesses along the way. Luke also makes another appearance. I'm eating this up. For being in my mid-30s, I'm loving Percy Jackson, and I don't know why I've waited this long. My 15-year-old, oh God, he's going to be 15 in a week. This is what we've been talking about. We sat and watched the show after I read book 1, and it was so much more on par with how that story went, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. Though I personally still see Logan Lerman as Percy. I don't know why, I just do. Like, I think he fits Percy better as, like, the descriptor, but I don't know. And I enjoyed the movies. I know it's a hard thing to say, and I know it's something that we don't typically agree on or say that we enjoyed the movies, but I hadn't read the books. If I were to go back and watch the movies now, they would be a good time. They wouldn't be right, and I'd be super angry about it, but I'd still have a good time. I enjoyed the cast, and I think that was part of the problem, was I just really enjoyed the cast in that moment. I think that they did the right thing by going back and aging the characters back down where they should be. And there's a little Cora. Cora girl likes to create chaos, as we all know. But I think that this is a really good way that they're going about things. I think it's a great way, and it's definitely getting more people interested, because you have moms that maybe haven't read it, or dads who haven't read it, who are sitting down and watching it with their kids and then wanting to watch or read the books. So I think Rick Riordan did a really great job with this, and I can't wait to continue book 3 for September, but we'll get into the fall TBR later. This book, The Love of My Afterlife, was my favorite book from August, and I'm so thankful to book bestie Gabby for recommending this book. So what happens is you have the recently deceased Delphi. So she died, right? Choked on a piece of hamburger. It happens in chapter 1. It's so funny. But she ends up in the afterlife, and she meets this guy in the afterlife, and her afterlife consultant decides, hey, you can go back to Earth for 10 days. And in those 10 days, you have to get him to fall in love with you. Well, she goes back, she gets into her apartment, she gets into an adventure with one of her apartment mates. Cora's moving my camera, I'm so sorry. And chaos ensues. The twist of who her afterlife consultant is, how she reacts, and who she has connections with in the real world is insane. I was so thrown for a loop with this book, and that may be a tiny spoiler, and I'm really sorry if it is. I absolutely loved this because it gave Delphi, who was stuck in a rut, this way to go back and live her life differently and actually engage with the people around her and create a sense of family. And it felt like a shot to the gut because personally, I'm a homebody. I like spending time with my dog. I like spending time with my kid. I play video games with some friends. I read books. I talk book club. I'm a homebody. I'm an introvert. I don't like to go out. But this book was like, maybe you really should. Not that I don't have IRL friends or you know what I mean, but like go out and experience some new things. Because since the pandemic, I have been struggling with mental health issues, and it's been a really bad situation for my anxiety to actually leave my house, which is why I work from home. So having this book come at that moment was like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to go out and live a little bit and have new experiences and stuff like that. So this was a 5-star book. Absolutely loved it. It was my favorite book of the month. I quite enjoyed it. And then we have my reread of the month. I have not read Clockwork Angel in years. Talon was maybe just born whenever I read this, so it's been at least 15 years since I read it. These are the beautiful special edition paperbacks with the edges here. I'm pretty sure that is Will. So this follows the Shadowhunters in Victorian England. It is part of the Shadowhunters universe. It technically comes after the first 3 books of the Mortal Instruments. However, The Infernal Devices, which is this series, is my favorite out of Cassandra Clare's work. I absolutely adore this book more than anything. This entire trilogy is fantastic. You're following Jem, Will, and Tessa. And Tessa is an anomaly. You have your warlocks. If you're familiar with the Shadowhunters universe, you know kind of what you're getting here. Jem and Will are Shadowhunters. Tessa is technically a warlock, but she doesn't have any of the warlock markings. So you're trying to figure these things out of why is Tessa different? Why is Tessa this way? Meanwhile, she is developing crushes on Jem and Will, and for a love triangle, this one is done correctly. 3 books, beautifully done. This is one of the only love triangles that I will ever read. I'm not a big fan of the love triangle trope, but this series is perfection. Front to back. I cannot wait to continue reading this. Shan, if you're watching this, I adore you, and I can't wait for our buddy read to continue with Clockwork Angel, because this makes me so happy. Clockwork Prince is the next book. But yes, I absolutely love this book. It was so good. It was also a 5-star reread. The thriller that I read this month is technically not a thriller, but more like a murder mystery. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Somebody by Benjamin Stevenson. This was great. I was not prepared. It goes through literally everybody in his family has killed somebody, and you get this story, and it's a family reunion where his brother is getting out of prison and meeting them up on the hill. And I really can't tell you too much about this, because if I do, it gives a lot of it away. But there is tension between the family. There is different things that are going on. The twist of who it is, I didn't see it coming. This was a good time. The little tab here, though, is the 10 murder mystery commandments. And he follows them to the letter. You don't know exactly what's going on. So the 10 commandments of a murder mystery is: the criminal must be someone mentioned in the early parts of the story, but must not be anyone whose thoughts the reader has to follow. So you're following Ernest, and only Ernest. You're in one character's set of heads. So he's telling you, I'm not the murderer. All supernatural or preternatural agencies are ruled out as a matter of course. So no ghosts, no vampires, no werewolves, etc. Number 3, not more than 1 secret room or passage is allowed. Number 4, no hitherto undiscovered poisons may be used, nor any appliance which will need a long, significant explanation at the end. Number 5, author's note: culturally outdated historical wording redacted. Number 6, no accident must ever help the detective, nor must he ever have an unaccountable intrusion which proves to be right. Oh, unaccountable intuition. My apologies. I swear I can read. Number 7, the detective must not himself commit the crime. Number 8, the detective must not light on any clues that are not instantly produced for the inspection of the reader. Number 9, the stupid friend of the detective, or the Watson, must not conceal any thoughts which pass through his mind. His intelligence must be slightly, but very slightly, below that of the average reader. 10, twin brothers and doubles generally must not appear unless they have been duly prepared for. And this is Ronald Knox's 10 Commandments of Detective Fiction from 1929. So Ernest is an author. He writes how-tos of murder mystery. And it follows Ernest and Ernest figuring out what the hell is going on this mountain. Because they're at a ski resort for a family reunion, and craziness ensues. This is such a good time, and it's an Australian author, so I'm very excited to pick up the second one. At the time of recording this, which is September 2nd, the second book that I know that he's written in this series was $2.99 on Kindle, so go pick them up. They're very good. I have 2 more physical books. Sorry, this is going to be long. 24 books is insane. Curse of Shadows and Thorns is part of a series that my best friend Ashley decided that I needed to read. For a birthday gift, so this will no longer be in my possession the next time I see her. But this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with some fae and magic and a really interesting story, but it's like 9 books in this series. It's insane. Am I going to continue it? Probably. Is it an immediate continuation? No. Basically, I plan on reading these for her birthday and for Christmas so that I can annotate them and give them to her as gifts, because there's nothing I like better than receiving an annotated book for a gift, which was clearly indicated by Done and Dusted. It is one of my most prized possessions. I also have Love Redesigned that I haven't gotten to yet from a book bestie a little bit earlier, and I absolutely love that one too. They are prized possessions. But yes, this was a 4-star read. Again, good start to a series, but it wasn't mind-blowing or anything that I was super invested in. But it is really good. Like it's a solid book. It's just not one that if I wasn't reading it for Ashley, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. And then the last book that I read is Renegades. This will be part of its own little vlog because Marissa Meyer is quickly becoming one of my absolute favorite authors. I adore the Lunar Chronicles. It is one of my favorite book series. It's one of the series that got me back into reading along with The Infernal Devices. So I absolutely have a very special place for these retellings. However, The Renegades is an entirely different thing. It's a fantasy sci-fi fiction mix. Think Marvel Universe, but in teenagers or young adults, I guess. You're following the Renegades and you're following the Anarchists. You're following Nova and Adrian. The audiobook is fantastic, and I will get into more of this in its own separate reading vlog because I am reading this entire series for the first time. So this is going to get its own special moment. But I gave this a 4.5 or a 4.75. Solid beginning of the book. I have a feeling that this is going to be a 5-star series for me. I absolutely fucking this book so much. We're gonna get into I also read my one audiobook was this one. I dual read and did the immersion reading and flipped back and forth between the audiobook and the physical copy. And I'm doing the same with the second book. Now that we have done all that, those are all the physical books. We have about 16 Kindle books. Now, granted, some of these are, 11 of them are a manga. So we're going to talk about the manga first. I fell down a rabbit hole of Witch Hat Atelier, which is this cute little magician or witch. So they're witches and they all wear the little witch hat and they're so cute. But you're following Coco and Kefri. I don't know how to say his name, but he's the master. He's teaching all of the apprentices, and it follows his little atelier on their adventures. So it's a cute little found family. Coco they find out their magic system is actually really cool because it is drawings and sigils. So it ties in that actual witchcraft, but it is something where they hide magic from the normal people. So witches have to go through different tests and trials to be able to hide their casting. So I read the first 11 volumes in a matter of 3 days, I think. I read 8 of them in a day. It was insane. It was a lot. I really enjoyed that manga. I'm not typically a manga reader. I've read Heartstopper, and I have read Heart of Attack on Titan. But that's because I really like the Attack on Titan anime. So this is a brand new series, and I absolutely devoured it. The first one was on Kindle Unlimited, and then I immediately bought the entire rest of the series. I did finish the Windy City series. I read Caught Up and Play Along, which are the two brothers that are on the baseball team. And oh my gosh, these books were so good. The Windy City series is a 5-star series for me. The first two books I read last month, June and July. I read them all this summer. But the Caught Up follows Ace and Miller, and Ace is a single dad. Miller is a dessert cook or a pastry chef, and she becomes his nanny for the baseball season, and they're very cute. I really liked their dynamic. However, his brother Isaiah and Kennedy are a marriage of convenience kind of thing, accidental marriage in Vegas. Kennedy is one of the athletic trainers, but she's actually a doctor, and Isaiah has been keeping her secret for years. And this is all revealed very early on in the book, so it's nothing spoiler. Kennedy has always been a part of the series. You've seen her in the background, but you don't know that she's a doctor until then. And Isaiah is very much into the supporting Kennedy and making sure that she's getting what she needs. And they keep up the charade of the marriage for a while because of the events that are happening in Kennedy's life. But if I'm ranking Windy City series books, The Right Move, Ryan and Indy are still my OTP of the series. They are the top tier. Ryan Shea is right underneath Theo Silva for my favorite book boyfriend currently. 2 would be Play Along. Is that the name? Yeah, Play Along, Caught Up, and then what's the first one? Mile High? Yeah, Xander and Stevie's book. The 5th book comes out, I think, next year, and it's Rio's book, and I'm so excited for that one. Once we get through that will conclude the Windy City series, and I'm very excited for that. I have 4 more books. Next one that I read was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, which was fantastic. It took me a while to get into it because fantasy is not my typical genre. I do enjoy it. I read a fair amount of it, but when you compare my stats between romance and fantasy, romance will take the cake. Now, if it's a mix of the two, it's easier for me to pick up, but higher fantasy things or heavy world building sometimes is harder for my brain. Fall is my fantasy season. Like, this is whenever I sit down and read fantasy. But Amina Al-Sarafi follows a pirate captain in the Middle East. And she gets pulled into a job because one of her old crewmates who passed away, his daughter is missing. So it goes on this adventure, and it tells all of the different stories between Amina's daughter, Amina's daughter's father, the different ship crew members. And it tells you this story, and it's so gripping and engrossing once you get into the story. And I do believe it's supposed to be a series. This is one that I will absolutely be continuing because the interviewee between Amina and the writer of Amina's story is so fantastic. I love that, and they do end up telling you how that author knows Amina and how it comes about, and it's so good. I really liked it. The different structure and learning more about the Middle East culture was amazing for me. It's not something that I know a lot of, which is another reason why it was harder for me to get into, because it's not a culture that I'm familiar with. I'm so glad that I sat through it and I read it because it was so enriching and so entertaining. And Amina's a mom. Like, I'm a single mom. Amina's a single mom. It hit very close to home as far as what is actually going on and how a mom has to deal with work and raising her kid and relying on her family and things like that. So, great read. How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. I really enjoyed that book, but it's very meta. So it's one of those books where if you're a D&D nerd, like myself, then you are going to love this book because it is tailored to the D&D nerds. I don't know if anybody's seen my Dicey Dice tattoo, but I also play D&D very regularly. I play on Quest Junkies and Phoenix Sawaki on Twitch. If you want to check out, or Quest Junkies UK is the proper name to find them on Twitch. They run 3 or 4 different campaigns regularly. I participate in a Vampire the Masquerade. It's a good old time, but this book was catered to us. The meta that's there is just insane, and it's one of those things where, right, you need to move. Thank you. You can get your spotlight. We're gonna do a Cora picks here, but lay down. But it's one of those things. So Dabby has been told, hey, you have to rescue this land from the Dark Lord. Well, every time she dies, she resets. So it's very interesting for her until all of a sudden she decides, fuck this shit. I'm gonna become the Dark Lord. And that's where this book picks up, is Dabby becoming the Dark Lord. And it's a trip. Like, it's somebody plucked from this world and thrown into a fantasy world. And she's lived 248 lives, 200 and some lives, 200 plus. And it's very entertaining. It's one of those, it's a good time. It's very meta. You go into it not expecting a whole lot out of it, but it's a good time. The last 2 books that I read were the book club pick from Sarah's book club, Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, which was delightful. It was a single mom who goes through a divorce and then ends up being with a guy that she meets at the dog park where her dog pees on him. It was adorable. I love that book. As a single mom, it hit a little bit too close to home in a lot of aspects, and it was very eye-opening. I don't have a lot of words to express how I feel about that book, which is very rare for me. But I really enjoyed that book exponentially. And then the last one that I read was The Lost Story, which was my first book by Meg Schaefer. But it is very similar to the Chronicles of Narnia, in that 2 boys went missing in West Virginia whenever they were 15, 16, in their teens. They come back, they are now adults, and the girl, I can't remember her name. This was a few weeks ago, and we've read a lot of books. But the girl finds out that her sister is missing. Well, the boys met the girl, and it's their job to help get the sisters reunited. And that's where the story takes off. So, all in all, books were immaculate this month. I can't wait to see what September does, because it's going to be a crazy book reading month. Hopefully we get a lot of time. This week coming up is my son's 15th birthday, and it's insane to think that he's going to be 15. Back to school starts on Tuesday. It's a busy month, but it's going to be a good time. Let me know what your favorite book of August was, if there's anything that should be on my radar for the fall. And hopefully y'all enjoyed. Give a like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I just like to talk about books. So if you have books that you want to talk about, or if you want to ask questions about the books that you saw today, awesome. Until next time, I'll see you later, bookish besties.